What's up guys, Coach Az. Apologies for the lack of upload last week. Things have been a little bit crazy around here, but I got a question from one of our subscribers and I thought it was a really good one. So I'm going to read it out to you and then we're going to try and give this guy some help. Okay, so here's his question. Hey Az, I found kickboxing around 1 year ago now and it was love at first kick. I quickly got really into the sparring side of things. My coach is great, but I found myself getting really frustrated when sparring him. It's been a year and it's not like I expect to be able to beat him or anything, but I still don't feel like I can even land a clean shot, or at least not many. I feel the progress when I spar others in the gym, but whenever it comes to him, I find it quite disheartening. Don't get me wrong, he doesn't beat me up, he's got control. I just don't feel like I've made any progress to getting any closer to beating him. Is this normal? Any advice on how I can improve or at least not let this get to me so much? Keep up all the great content and thanks for taking the time to read my question. Dude, thank you so much for your question. And I think a lot of people listening to that would either be nodding along in agreement that they feel that way, or certainly have seen it or understood it. So let's break it down, because you say a lot in there and you raise a lot of points which need to get covered. So let's go right from the beginning. Firstly, you've been doing it for a year. It's really important for you to understand that that's not a very long time. Like, in the grand scheme of things, when it comes to martial arts training, it's a drop in the water. You're not going to not make progress, and especially in your first year, you're actually going to make probably the most progress you're going to make in your entire time training, because you're completely new. Everything is new. So you're learning all the techniques, you're learning the guard positions, you're learning the footwork, and really what the rest of your career is, what the rest of your time is, you're not really learning new punches and kicks after a year. Jab, cross, hook, uppercut, front kick, side kick, roundhouse kick. Once you've got all the techniques, it's really just about refining them and then understanding how to make them land. Things like distance management, timing, situational training, that's what all comes into play. So the first thing is just understand that you've not been training that long. So don't expect to compete with someone who, I'm going to assume your coach has been training for 10 plus years. It's probably way more than that. You didn't mention kind of their credentials in terms of if they competed, if they're still active, your ages, anything like that, and even your size, because you might have a huge size discrepancy between you. You've then said that you get frustrated sparring him. You don't expect to be able to beat him, which is good, but you don't even feel like you can land much on him. And this is kind of the big part of your question is you spar this guy, and although you know you must be improving, every time you spar him, there's no progress. I want to run through this with you, and I don't want this to come across as big-headed on my part as a coach. It's just the reality of the situation, okay? Someone new comes into my gym and they get into the sparring. We get them the kit and we start sparring with them. On day one of sparring them, I have the ability to just knock them out cold, and pretty much at any given point that I wanted to. If I wanted to, with the majority of new people, I could, within 2 moves, knock them out cold. I don't mean that as a brag. I really don't mean that as big-headed. I'm just saying I've been sparring and doing kickboxing for 20 plus years. I've got a lot of experience. I've got the weapons. And if I wanted to, that's what I could do to someone who has no idea what they're doing in that scenario. Obviously now, I'm not going to do that to a guy, okay? If someone signs up, a guy, a girl, they start sparring with me. That's not what I'm going to do on day one. Now, there are certain gyms where that is the attitude. They just beat you up, knock you out, put you on the side, get you back in. If you quit, you quit. And if you don't quit, maybe you survive long enough to get good enough. They kind of burn you like that. We're not that kind of gym. And it sounds like your gym isn't that kind of gym. Effectively, what we do is we play with you, and it's like a cat playing with a mouse. We will allow you to work with us. We will let you move around. We will let you throw some techniques. We will probably block and move out of the way, because it also doesn't make sense for us. We're sparring every day. Like, I'm sparring constantly with my guys. It doesn't make sense for me to keep taking headshots and taking punches so that they can learn how to hit stuff. I'm not going to get myself all beaten and bruised so that my, students can learn how to land shots. So I'm still going to be intelligently defending myself at all times. I'm not going to stand there and absorb unnecessary shots. But I'm not going to hit you unnecessarily either. In fact, I'm not going to hit you much at all. I'll just pepper you with the odd jab. I'm also normally talking during sparring with my guys, trying to give them a little bit of feedback. As you progress, as you improve over the months, and like you at the next part, you kind of spoke about you don't feel this way when you spar other people in the gym, the other students, because the level is different. You can feel a bit of progress. Maybe you land a few more kicks. Maybe you land a few more shots. The problem with coach is we've got a whole bunch more gears that we can go up to. So when you do start showing signs of improvement, you start knowing and understanding how to get into range with your hands, you start understanding how to use fakes to set up your kicks, whatever it might be, we take our game up a gear. So then you kind of come back to zero, if you get what I mean. Like you're here, you get to here, so then I come to here. You keep training, you get to here, and I come to here. And I've got all these gears above you. Now, this isn't an endless cycle because, my opinion, a really good coach ends up with people who are better than him. The whole idea is that for each generation, we should be better at teaching and better at doing it so that we can pass on all of our knowledge at an earlier stage to people, so that by the time they're at their prime or even before their prime, they already know everything we know and they're starting to build their own ideas upon it. And this is why each generation of fighters should be better than the last. I don't want to be the best guy in my gym. In fact, I don't even want to be in the top 5. I just want to make sure that I'm the best coach in the gym. But against newbies, against people with little experience, I'm still levels and levels above. And again, I know what it sounds like, but I really don't mean it as a brag. I mean it for you to understand the approach that a coach would take to ensure that you have a good relationship with sparring. So although you might find it disheartening, just imagine how disheartening it would be if your coach just went all out on you. You probably would have quit on day one. You probably wouldn't be here a year later still sparring with them. At the same time, as I said, your coach isn't going to just stand there and allow you to whack them. If they've got the ability to defend themselves, they're going to do so. If you feel like you're not making any progress, then obviously you just need to have a conversation with your coach. You need to start identifying and getting your coach to identify what it is specifically you could work on to start making it work. Another thing to consider is, and you use the term beat him in your question a couple of times. I've done a video previously about sparring where I really try to make it clear that you shouldn't be trying to quote unquote win your sparring matches. You're not competing in the gym, you're training in order to compete at competition. So don't treat the in-house sparring as trying to win. Now, ego and everything else, someone's going to hit someone more than the other. Each sparring round, you could sit back and say which person beat the person. But the problem with having that attitude towards your sparring is it ends up narrowing your scope. When you go into competition, you're going to default to the things that you've got ingrained in your system. No matter what tactics you've thought about, no matter what strategies you've developed, when you get into the fight and your adrenaline's pumping and you start getting tired, your body and your mind are going to default to the default settings, which for you, who knows what it might be, a 1-2 bat leg roundhouse. And this is where, we get things like really obvious tells. For example, go watch John Jones versus DC. And John Jones talked about in the run up to the fight, this thing that DC does where he leans his head off to one side. And then lo and behold, he caught him with a head kick. Because he knew about this tendency that no matter what DC done, DC was aware of it, DC's mentioned he knows about it, he knows it happens, but he can't help it. It's a default setting, okay? Now, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent here, but let me pull it back to what we're saying. If you spar people like you're trying to beat them, you're going to spar them under your default settings, which means that there's not going to be any opening for you to develop anything new. You're always just going to be working off of what you already know. This is why you might want to spar and just focus in on something that you're not very good at, which might mean that you quote unquote lose the sparring match. When we kind of sit back and got a judge to look at it, they'd say, yeah, you got hit more than this guy. But what we don't know is that you were working on something very specific and you're not very good at it. So therefore it was failing more than it was succeeding, but you were training it. you were drilling it. That's a really important thing to know within your sparring in general, is you can't go into a sparring room and walk out happy or unhappy or satisfied or unsatisfied with the spar based off of how many people in the room you beat. Because although yes, that's one measure of progress, it's a very frustrating way to look at things, because you're just going to have days where you're not winning. You're going to have bad sparring days, and then you're going to have days where the people in the room are just not on your level. So you beat everyone. It's nice for your ego, but you haven't necessarily improved. So when you go and spar coach, who's levels above, although maybe you're beating everyone else in the room, you haven't actually made any progress to beating him, because you're just beating everyone who's at a lower level. Now, if you went and fought these lower level people and started working on the weaker parts of your game, when you came to coach, maybe this refinement of your game would mean that you're getting closer and closer to their level in terms of sparring. I hope that helps. You talked about your coach being controlled and not putting a beating on you. So I think that's a really important thing to identify, is that you shouldn't be getting too disheartened, because it sounds like you've got a great coach. It sounds like he cares about you. He's not trying to hurt you, but at the same time, he's not going to let you just wail on him. He's just obviously levels above you, and that's perfectly fine. You need to understand and enjoy the journey, man. Come back in 5 years. Come back in 10 years and tell me what it's like to spar him, because I guarantee it's going to be different in that much longer time frame, which is the way you need to look at things. I know it's because you're passionate about it and it's because you care about it, that's why you want to improve so quickly, but there's no shortcuts with this. There's efficient ways of doing it, and to be honest, it sounds like you are efficiently doing it. You're sparring with people, you're sparring with your coach. These are all the right moves to be making, but there's no quick route. There's no shortcut. It is the time spent on the mats. This is why, in jiu-jitsu, they talk about 10 years to get to a black belt. In certain other martial art styles, we're talking 6-7 years to get to a black belt. And ask the majority of black belts and they'll tell you that that's where the learning really starts. That first 5-6 years, you're just picking up the basics. You're actually just learning how to play the game. And it's only once you've learnt it all that you can really then start developing, producing your own style, having your own understanding of what works and what doesn't, based off of you, your genetics, your tendencies, your nature. Don't get too frustrated, man. 1 year is not a long time. Keep sparring with your coach. Stop trying to beat people. Work on improving yourself and developing your skills. Guys, I hope this video has been helpful. I have missed you. Please let me know what you'd like to see a video on next. I'm dealing with a couple of back injuries myself, so I'm going to be getting back to those striker breakdowns that you guys love so much as soon as I'm able to demonstrate some more techniques to you. All right, guys, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you on the next one.